All right, everybody. Welcome to the sixth masterclass of these facilitation masterclasses I've been doing over the past few months. And today's topic that we're going to dive into today is the third pillar of the transformational facilitation framework that I have developed over 15 years, taken 15 years of experience as a facilitator in a variety of capacities, and really translating that into tools and trainings that I can provide to other amazing transformational leaders and facilitators. So today, the third pillar is all about presence over perfection. And it's the third pillar out of 5 because I think it's really like the core when I ask myself that question of what makes someone a transformational facilitator. I believe it really comes down to your personal presence and in how you are showing up. So before we dive into the amazing content for today, I just wanted to share a little bit with all of you. I know that some of you have been taking these master classes, so it's fun. I can see those of you who are on video. So Erin, which number of class is this for you? Is this your fifth one, fourth one? Monica, you've been to almost all of them. Yeah, 4 or 5. Awesome. And so I always just like to give a little bit of an introduction of my background and where I'm coming from. So really my first transformational experience was when I was 19 years old, and I went on this amazing 50-day Outward Bound course that changed the course of my life. And I really deem that as my first experience, like being around transformational facilitators. I would call my Outward Bound instructors, they were transformative in my life. And I think so much of that was how they showed up. And so from that moment in time, when I was 19 years old, I knew I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to help create transformational experiences for other people. And for a while, I majored in outdoor education. So I actually have a degree in being a camp counselor. And I was a wilderness guide for a while. I have my master's degree in education. And a lot of what I learned was about adult learning theory and program development, program design, and doing all of my workshops, trainings, retreats, putting on my own events, really figuring out like what's the sweet stuff? Like what's the sweet spot? What's the magic that makes workshops, meetings, trainings, and events actually transformational? And that's kind of the journey that I've been on over the past few months, is like taking all of that like 15 plus years of experience and giving it to you. So this class and all of the facilitation master classes are really designed for people like yourselves, people that are coaches, people that are managers, leaders, people that are putting on their own events and workshops, or people that want to be doing that and want to do it in a way that really does leave people transformed. You know, I know that when people give us their time, money, and energy, like as coaches and leaders, we want them to get everything out of that experience that's possible. And so I want to give you the tools in order to do that. How's that sound? Does that sound good? And at the end, I always like to say, at the end, I'm going to share some ways that we can continue this conversation, because, you know, trying to put 15 years of experience into 1 hour is tough. So there's a lot of pieces to this, but these master classes are a way for me to break this down. And I want to talk about some ways where we can keep doing this work together. And I have some really exciting things in the works coming up that I would love to invite you to be a part of. How's that sound? Thumbs up for the people that the video I can see. I always say I wish we were all like in the same room together, but here we are, and using technology to connect across countries, states, all of the places, right? So as those of you who've been on these classes before, we have some community agreements. I like to model the way as a facilitator, and I like to keep these super simple. So our community agreements for today, I always like to type them in the chat box. The first one is to be open. You know, Have an open heart, open mind to learning something new. I mean, you're here today learning, so I'm guessing that you're like, that you are showing up with that mindset and that perspective. The second one is to be present, which we're going to be talking about today, knowing that there's a ton of other things I know you could probably be doing, but the more present you are, the more you're going to get out of it. I always like to say that. And the last one is to be engaged. So we're going to be using the chat box. I'm going to be asking you some questions. We're going to be doing some interactive stuff so that I'm not just talking at you for the next hour, but to engage with this idea of presence and practicing presence. So give me a thumbs up for those of you who I can see, and those of you who I can't see, I'm visualizing you giving me a thumbs up. And, I would encourage you and invite you as a facilitator to have your own variety or your own version of community agreements. Part of that is just setting you and the group up for success. It's a really simple thing, but it's a simple thing that can make a really huge difference. So the first question I would like to engage you all with is what inspired. So there's two parts, and you can answer one or both. What inspired you to join us today, to be here today? And what do you hope to get out of this masterclass? And I'm asking you this, this is an opportunity for you to get grounded and connected to your intention for being here, which I always think is a powerful thing to do with your people. Asking them, like, what inspired you to say yes to coming to this workshop, this retreat? I'm imagining that some of you facilitate things where people have to be there, maybe like team meetings or something like that. So, but it's like, well, what are you excited about for our meeting today? And it's planting a seed of helping reminding people why they're there. So I would love to hear either in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand, and I think you can do that by hitting, is it *9 on the phone, possibly? I'm not sure. I think that's how it goes. If anyone knows the answer to that question of how people raise their hand, let me know. So Erin says, I am hoping to not only learn how to be present, but show that I'm present, right? So it's one thing to feel like, oh, I think I'm being present, but do other people get that I'm being present with what we're doing? And so how do I demonstrate that? How do I model that? Monka says, you're modeling the way, and the valuable knowledge that you share with us inspired her to be here today. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Would anyone like to share verbally? You can raise your hand if you want. Again, you can type in the chat box. I always like to ask that question before we get started. I recently took a new job on at a college campus as a facilitator and leadership training for student leaders, and I would love to model best practices. Well, first of all, congrats on your job. Boom, high five. Michelle says, you're such a masterful facilitator. It's great to continue to absorb the wisdom. Thank you. And thank you for your presence. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. I don't take that lightly. I know that there's a million things you could be doing. But thank you for being with me today and for giving me your time, energy, and attention. So as I was preparing for our class and our time today, I thought about, what are actual tangible tools that you all can use in order to really practice presence over perfection. So we're gonna do something a little bit different. And one of the ways in which I get really present before delivering a talk, a presentation, a workshop, is to get grounded. And one way to get grounded and really present is to do a guided, meditation or visualization, which I'm going to lead you through. I'm going to say a couple things about that before we get started. And one of the reasons for that is to help us go from what's called a sympathetic nervous state system. Our sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight mode. That's the space where we're running around, we have all of these things to do, and we're just that energy that feels like I'm just all over the place. And that can happen before doing something that elevates our adrenaline levels. Like anytime we present or we facilitate, we can get into that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system. And what meditation does, and it can be short. I'm going to do a short visualization meditation with y'all. Gets us into our parasympathetic nervous system, where we're more calm, we're more relaxed, we're more grounded. And when we have that energy, we can show up in such a different way. So I'm going to invite people. If you're on video, you can totally leave your video on. There's a way to do stop video, and I'm going to lead us all through a short meditation for us to get present and for you to feel the difference, even in just 2 minutes. So I invite you to wherever you're at, hopefully as long as you're not driving, is to close your eyes and put your feet on the floor. And I'm going to invite you just to take 3 deep breaths. And as you keep breathing, imagine yourself getting even more grounded and more present to this moment. Presence is really fully engaging in the moment right now. And I'm going to invite you to imagine deep roots coming out from the bottom of your feet, all the way into the earth, into the soil, continuing to reach further and further down into the earth, all the way to the core. I'm going to invite a question, and that question is, what do you feel like you need as a facilitator to be fully present when you're teaching, leading, guiding? What would help you practice that radical presence? And invite whatever comes to your mind to come to your mind. Whatever that is for you. Maybe it's trust. Maybe it's allowing. Maybe it's flow. Whatever that is, I invite you to imagine your roots from the core of the earth, pulling that energy, all of those things that you need in order to be fully present, up from the earth, from the core, up through the bottoms of your feet, up through your legs, up through the core, up through the top of your head, and filling you up completely. And I invite you to take 3 deep breaths again and breathe all of that in throughout your entire body, your entire being. Take one more breath and slowly begin to come back into our space, our room together. And if you stopped your video, you can bring it back if you would like, so we can see your beautiful face. And I just want to ask a reflection question. How do you feel after doing just that short guided meditation visualization? What feels different about your presence or yourself or your heart rate, like just from before and after? So you can share. I'm happy to. You can unmute yourself and share. If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself and share, or type in the chat box. So Chris says centered and relaxed, peaceful. Erin says she feels more calm and clear. I've slowed down. Kelly says I've slowed down from my typical pace of go, go, go. Sharita says relax and calm. So my next question for that is, what do you think would be different as a facilitator if you did something like this before every time you facilitated? What do you think would be different for you in how you're able to show up and how you're able to hold space, and how it would feel facilitating? Tell me what you think would be different is if you just took those few minutes to get calm, to get grounded, to get centered. What would be different in how you're showing up?
This is Erin. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I feel like that calm and kind of like centered feeling would spread, I think, as a facilitator, I think, to your audience. So I think that would be a huge benefit of that.
Yeah, awesome. One of the things I like to say is our energy is contagious. So if we're showing up and we're nervous, we're in our fight or flight, we're like in this super frantic go, go, go mode, guess what? That energy, like, other people mirror your energy. So thinking about what energy do I want to bring, and inviting, like, what do I need in order to be fully present and in order to have that calm, grounded energy that I know is going to ripple out into everyone else who's there. Chris said, I think it would help me think more clearly and more slowly, being more thoughtful with my choices. Oh, my name is Molly. Perfect. Molly, thanks for that. I was just reading the little username thing. So Molly, thank you. Sharita says, feeling more open. What do you mean by that? Say a little bit more about more open, what that would be like if you were showing up that way. You can type in the chat box if you want, or unmute yourself if you like it. Yeah, so I think that our ability to fully show up, it's like, I always like to ask myself that question as a facilitator: how do I set myself up for success to deliver the type of experience that I really want to facilitate? And sometimes we think it means planning the perfect activity or having the perfect agenda or the perfect meeting, but part of preparing as a transformational facilitator is presence. And one of my favorite facilitators, his name is Kyle Cease, and he leads these like events with 3,000 people, and people ask, and he has nothing planned and nothing prepared for these like 2-day events. And he says, well, people have asked him, how do you plan and prepare? And he says, I meditate 2 hours a day. And I'm not saying that you have to go out there and meditate 2 hours a day, but even 2 minutes can make a huge difference in being calm and being grounded. And so that's just, I didn't want to just say like, meditate for 2 minutes before you go and like facilitate. I wanted you to actually experience what that feels like in your body, so that it's a kinesthetic reminder if you are getting into your fight or flight brain. Sometimes actually all you need to get back into that parasympathetic, calm, relaxed state is one deep breath. I mean, the more breaths, the better. But if you're like kind of in running around mode, it drops us further in. Sharita says, being calm makes you more open to being present and makes you a better listener, right? So when I looked up, as I was putting this together, I was like, well, what's the ultimate definition of presence over perfection, or like presence and perfection? Sometimes definitions don't make sense, especially when they use the word in the definition. So I'm going to share you the definition I found, and I'm going to share the definition I created. So the definition I found for presence is the state or fact of existing, occurring, or being present in a place or thing. Again, using the word in the definition. My definition for presence, and this is maybe more helpful to actually write down, is being fully engaged in the moment. Being fully engaged in the moment. And I think letting go of the past or the future. Because anxiety comes from, how's it going to go? And is this enough? And is it going to be good? And all of these things. Presence is just acknowledging that all we have is right now, this very moment. That's it. And it's letting go of the past, and it's letting go of being attached to the future. It's being here right now. Presence is also about being connected in who you are and trusting that what you have to share and what you know is enough. I think I see a lot of people trying to I don't know if it's like put bells and whistles on things, or feeling like they have to be someone or be something that they're not, versus just being who you are and trusting that your presence is the greatest gift that you can give your people. It's the greatest gift you can give your people. One of my favorite quotes says, attention is the rarest and greatest form of generosity. I think I've said that before in one of these classes. Attention is the rarest and greatest form of generosity. And in this day and age, when people are on their phones and people are distracted, you showing up and being really present and holding that energy of presence, people are like totally drawn to that and lean in because they aren't used to someone being present. We're used to interacting with people all the time that are super distracted. So presence is about being fully engaged in the moment, being connected to who you are, and what you have to offer, and knowing that that is enough, way more than enough. And it's really about it's ultimately around this question, which is one of my favorite questions, is what shows up when you show up? Meaning when you walk into a room, what energy do you bring to that room or that space that wasn't there before? Meaning your natural state, your natural way of being. And maybe that is curious, or maybe you have a lot of passion or enthusiasm, or you have a lot of wisdom, or you have a lot of compassion and empathy and care. But I love that question around so I would love to hear from you. What do you think? What shows up when you show up? What is the natural energy that you feel like you bring to your workshops, events, retreats, your team, if you're part of a team? Another way to think about this is, what are the nice things that other people say about me? What does my team come to me for? Or why are people coming to my workshops? And this is really about cultivating a strong sense of self-awareness as a facilitator. Do you know what people are coming to you for? Because they're probably coming for whatever amazing content you have to give, but they're also probably coming for you. Or that maybe they love having you as part of their team, Erin, because you like know a lot of great things, but it's also the way in which you do it. It's who you're being when you're doing what you're doing. Does that question make sense? The what shows up when you show up question? What do you think shows up when you show up? I want to hear from a couple people in the chat box. Or if you're on the phone, you can like talk it out with me. What shows up when you show up? And if you don't know the answer to this question, this is one of your fun work assignments. I don't give homework, I give fun work. Does that make sense? I don't know. Vulnerable ages, fun, comfortable, fun work. So I'm gonna leave that in there. Does anyone actually want to answer this question? I think the thing that shows up when I show up is, I've called it contagious enthusiasm. And so this idea of my energy, like I know that my energy is contagious, whether I'm in a bad mood or a good mood, but most of the time I'm very enthusiastic. And when I know that about myself, it's like I can fully own it. You know, sometimes when I've done like personality tests or assessments and it's like, you're super charismatic and you have a lot of energy and you have a lot of passion, and it almost like reinforces, like it gives me permission to be me. And it's realizing that's what people want. People want you. And so I think knowing what those gifts are, knowing that energy, that natural presence that you offer, that you bring, is such a key piece in being a transformational facilitator, is cultivating that self-awareness. So Marli says, I'm not sure, but I think approachability, openness, goofiness. So I always like to invite people to ask the people around you, ask your friends, ask your clients, ask your workshop people, ask your team, like, what do I bring to the team? That not the technical skills, but it's the energy, right? Kelly says kindness, and not necessarily the most knowledge on technical topics, but someone who can go and find answers. So I would call that like you're resourceful. So Kelly says kindness. Erin says calming effect, maybe almost, people feel safe with you. Positivity, right? So this is a fun thing to keep exploring. What is your natural, like what is your personal presence as a facilitator? And continue to explore that and ask questions. You know, one way of asking that on like a feedback form is, what did you specifically appreciate about my facilitation style? And 9 out of 10 times people will say, I love your energy. So I know that about me and I can own that now. If we don't know what that is, it's I always say asking someone what their greatest strengths are is like asking a fish what it's like to be a really great swimmer. They're just like, I'm just doing my thing, you know? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just like being a little fishy. And so I think it's helpful to have other people mirror that back to us. So I wanted to find out, okay, if we're talking about presence over perfection, what is perfection? I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. Still in the works, because I tend to want to, get it all right, do it all perfectly. But the definition, the crappy definition, I'll give you the crappy definition, like the real one, and I'll give you mine. It says perfection is the condition, state, or quality of being free, or as free as possible from all flaws or defects. Which, reading that, is pretty much impossible. So we're just straight up setting ourselves up for failure if we're like, our goal is perfection. And, I've thought about talks that I've seen or people that I've seen present or facilitate. And I've listened to people that had the most perfectly planned talk, workshop, but they weren't present. It was like they were somewhere else. It's like I could imagine that they were like reading the slides in their head, or they had rehearsed it so much that it sounded canned. And so I don't think, that idea of perfection means that people are going to like us, or that They're going to know that I'm like the expert and I'm going to get this all right. It's like, it's such an illusion, right? I don't think that that's actually what people want. I think more than ever, people want authenticity. They want the imperfection. They want something real, because that's when they connect and relate to you the most, is when you say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here figuring it out along with you. And maybe I'm a couple steps ahead, and I'm your guide along the journey. So back to my definition. So I give you the book definition or the Google definition. And my definition of perfection is doing and getting it all right. Again, like I said, I think it's the illusion that we think that that's what people want. Like, we think people want that. And actually what they want is you and your presence and the opportunity to genuinely connect. So when I thought about these two ideas of presence versus perfection, and that presence is ultimately more valuable than perfection, I thought about the idea around, how you're showing up in your meetings, trainings, events, and workshops. And presence to me is about genuine commitment to your intention. So presence is about your genuine commitment to your intention, whatever that intention is, but really getting grounded in whatever that is for you. My intention is for people to connect. My intention is to inspire. My intention is to share. My intention is to provide an opportunity for transformation. And what perfection is, it's an attachment to a certain outcome. So presence is about your commitment to your intention, and perfection is about attachment to an outcome. And so I think about, like, how committed can I be to, like, showing up fully, to sharing myself, to really listening and paying attention, and just to be really grounded in whatever that intention is, and showing up from a place of that there's just a different energy around commitment versus attachment. And so that's a big, do people have questions about commitment versus attachment? Does that make sense? I'm just checking my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything there. So we're gonna keep exploring. I have a couple more prompts for us to keep playing with this. So I'm gonna have you fill in the blank, and you can do this in the chat box or you can unmute yourself. When I am present, I blank. So when you're present, what happens? Like, what gets to happen when you're present? Or how do you feel? Like, when I am present, I feel blank. Or what is that like? Like, I just want to, I guess, clarify what it actually feels like and looks like and sounds like to be present. So if you are present, so you feel like, let's play with this. Let's fill in the blank. And I want to fill in the blank too, because I like to play these games. When I am present, I feel connected to my intention. I feel connected to myself. I feel connected to something bigger than me. Monica says connected to my inner wisdom, right? So when you're present, you can really connect with that place of, like, I got this. Kelly says, I ask deep questions that show I've really been listening, right? So when I'm truly present, I can engage with people in a whole different way. You feel like you're utilizing your skill sets. So if you were to, I want to embody this idea of, like, where does presence live in your body? Like if you could, the idea is finding a way to anchor that feeling. And for some people, maybe it's in your feet, maybe it's in your heart. But if I just intuitively, if I just ask you the question, where does presence live in my body? Maybe it's your heart, maybe it's your hands. You can put it in the chat box if you want, but just where does it live? Heart area only, okay. Heart, chest, great. So the idea of knowing where that lives in your body is this anchor point. So that way when you notice you're not being present, that sometimes you could just put your hand on your heart and you can even like turn away, or you could do whatever, or you could do it with people watching and take a big parasympathetic deep breath and just reconnect. And so it's a way, so part of presence is noticing, when am I being present and when am I not? So I think it's also important to notice, what is non-presence sound like, feel like, look like? So we're going to name that as well. So when I am not present, I am blank. So when I'm not present, and you can fill in the blanks in the chat box, when I am not present, I am distracted. I am worried about what everyone else thinks. I'm, annoyed. My mind is in competition. Like, there's worry, there's concern about making a good impression. Multitasking, just doing other things. Maybe Erin says she's quiet, not fully engaged. Concerned what I'm going to say, if I'm going to do it right. Not devoting myself to the topic at hand, like playing with your clothes, right? You can even, as we're reading those, I'm like noticing my heart rate elevate and getting into that fight or flight mode, and noticing again the sympathetic nervous system is going into, when I'm not present, I'm worried about what other people are thinking. I'm distracted. I'm multitasking. I'm all over the place. My energy is like out of whack. And so when you feel this way, notice where does that non-presence live in your body? Where does non-presence live in your body? I would say it's like I get butterflies in my stomach a little bit. Like I almost get nauseous. And if you're listening to this, you can be writing in your journal. You can be taking notes. I know that there's a lot of people not on video here. Where does non-presence live in your body? Hands get sweaty, throat, forehead, mind. Yeah, so sometimes it does show up in your throat, meaning like it might just feel uncomfortable to speak or to share. Sometimes it feels constricting. Like, people are saying sweaty palms, throat, forehead, mind, like just spinning. I mean, the feeling of spinning out a little bit, heart racing, right? And so part of this, just naming some of these things of like, what does non-presence feel like? Where does it live in my body? And then how do I just ground and know, where does presence live in my body, so that I can come back to that state of being anytime that I want. I can always come back to that place. And sometimes just, again, taking a big, deep parasympathetic breath to come back to yourself. So I think the fun thing about this idea of presence over perfection is that it's something that you can practice every day, all the time. So it's not like we need to wait until we have these workshops or meetings or events, but it's like how asking yourself when you're having dinner with your friends or your family or going for a walk with someone or, meeting up with someone for coffee or whatever it is, asking yourself that question, like, how present am I really being? And that like this idea of presence is that it can become a personal practice of being present in the moment with where you're at, with who you're with what you're doing. And that way, when you go into these other arenas, maybe that the stakes feel a little bit higher that you've been practicing. I always say, like, these are all like little muscles that we get to build and develop over time. And not practicing these things when they like, quote unquote, when the stakes are lower, means that it's going to be way harder to practice them in the moment where the stakes feel a little bit higher. It's kind of like an Olympic athlete never practicing and then like showing up to the Olympics and being like, I got this, right? And so all of these things that like in the skills and the toolbox in the transformational facilitation framework is really just an invitation of noticing, awareness, and practice. And knowing that these are things that we can cultivate. These are skills that we can cultivate over time. So I would love to, as we start to close up our time together, I do want to leave enough time at the end for some Q&A and to share kind of some next steps, like I said, of ways to continue this conversation and continuing to practice this stuff in the context and in the container of community. So I would love to hear, I know that we kind of covered a lot today, and I'll end with, I was like, how do I bring this all together? But really, practicing radical presence means getting grounded in your intention, showing up fully to the experience, showing up fully and being fully engaged in the moment, being committed to creating a powerful experience, but not being attached, and really listening and paying attention in the moment. So those are the 4 steps that I kind of put together just to kind of like bring this all home. And I always like to ask at the end of my master classes about your 1 degree shift. And again, if you haven't heard the 1 degree shift metaphor and analogy, the idea is that, we covered a lot of things today around presence. And you don't have to leave here doing all of these things, but the idea of maybe like, what is the one thing that you can take from this masterclass into your work that is going to make the biggest difference? So the 1 degree metaphor, right, for those of you who haven't heard this, is that if you were on a sailboat and if you change your course on your sailboat just 1 degree, over the course of hundreds of thousands of miles, you can end up in a completely different place. So the idea of, I think, of facilitation and developing and honing these skills is making these small changes and small tweaks and small adjustments and seeing how that shifts and changes how you're showing up, and also the impact that has on the other people that you're leading, serving through your meetings, events, trainings, and workshops. So I would love to hear in the chat box, or for those of you who are on the phone, you can raise your hand and or unmute yourself and share, what is your 1 degree shift going to be? How are you going to take one small thing that you learned here today and incorporate that into your practice as a transformational facilitator? So Molly says, remembering where presence lives in my body and putting my hand on my heart as a grounding moment and reminder to practice this day-to-day in day-to-day life. Awesome. Erin says, now that we've talked about where in our bodies presence lives, I'm going to pay more attention to presence within my body and try grounding myself when I feel like I'm getting distracted. I love that. I think if Michelle Hawk is still on this call, I was brainstorming this masterclass, and she encouraged me to do an embodiment awareness exercise around this. So thank you. Thank you for that. I think it is really powerful to integrate this stuff that we might know intellectually, but really anchor that and ground it in our body so that it just becomes who we are. It cultivates a different level of awareness when we make it tangible and kinesthetic and like a sensation in our body. Kelly says, revisiting my intention before going into a workshop and remind myself that my intention is the ultimate goal, not one specific outcome. I love that. Yeah. I think that the idea of intention is obviously it's like knowing where you're going, but not being attached to it. I love that. And so if you have other 1 degree shifts, I invite you to share that in the chat box. Again, you can unmute yourself if you want to share, but I'm going to talk about some next steps that you could take with me as you continue to develop and hone your skills as a transformational facilitator. And really the biggest thing that I would love to invite you into is what I'm calling Facilitator Camp. For those of you who know me, I run a adult summer camp for women called Camp Yes, which is essentially a transformational experience. But what I've recently been discovering is I want to create those experiences specifically for facilitators to learn how to do this in the context of community. So what I've done is I've rented a beautiful house on the Oregon coast. It's at a retreat center, and there's only 5 spots left. Actually, there's going to be 10 facilitators. Half of them are already taken. And Facilitator Camp is a 4-day, 3-night experience where we get to dive even deeper into what does it mean to be a transformational facilitator, and how do I integrate this? It's all about practice and integration. So everyone who comes to Facilitator Camp is actually going to facilitate their own 30 to 45 minute interactive workshop where they're going to get feedback specifically from a group of facilitators. And throughout the weekend, we're going to develop our own facilitator playbook based on the activities that we find are the most powerful and the most helpful. It's super awesome. It's super fun. I'm super stoked about it. I'm super excited to invite you to apply because I want to make sure it's the right fit for you. So I want to give you the information. So Facilitator Camp is October 4th through 7th. And I'm going to put the link in the chat box so that you can hop on over there to see all of the information, and a link on applying. Once you apply, then we set up a call and I review your application. We set up a call, and I want to make sure that it's the right fit for you and that you can get what you want and need to really increase your confidence as a facilitator, up-level your skills, and build a strong sense of community with other people that are doing this work. And the biggest thing that I've learned as a facilitator is that I learned so much from practicing facilitation and getting really, really good feedback from people that actually know what the heck they're talking about, but also watching other people facilitate is so, like, there's just so much learning that happens just from watching other people and, oh, I like the way they did that, or that was a really cool activity. And, you know, there's so many books on facilitation, but like, I am such an experiential learner. It's like, I need to be in the room. I need to be in the room with the people, having these conversations, late night talks, playing games, hanging out on the beach, having adventures, sitting around a campfire. Like, that's how I learned the best. And that's what I wanted to create. I wanted to create the thing that I wanted to be a part of. So if you were interested in that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And all you need to do is fill out the application and I'll get back to you really soon. Like I said, there's only 5 spots left in that. So click on that link, check it out. And then the next masterclass and these masterclasses are free. They're a gift from my heart to your heart. So I'm going to go and snag the link to put that in the chat box so that you can just sign up for that right now. The next one is September 13th. And if there are people, next masterclass is on the 4th pillar of facilitation, transformational facilitation. So there's the link for that. The next masterclass. If there are other people in your world that you think that could benefit from these trainings, feel free to invite them. They're free. They're great. I want to provide like super helpful content in this way. So we got Facilitator Camp as one way to stay connected. You can apply for that. Applications are due by September 1st at the latest. But again, we review the applications as they come in. So it's a little bit of like a first come, first serve. Once they're gone, they're gone. The next free masterclass. And then if you have a specific event, training, or workshop you are putting together, I take on just a handful of one-on-one facilitation coaching clients every quarter that I work specifically with to help you develop whatever it is that you're working on. So even if it's like a seedling of an idea of like, hey, I'm thinking about putting this event on or putting this retreat on, and we would go from like idea to implementation, and that I would support you every step of the way. So if that is something that you are interested in, feel free to reach out. I only do them one-on-one coaching is just send me an email at marliwilliams.com. If that is something that you're interested in exploring, what we would do is just set up a first initial call, and I would hear from you about what you're up to, what you're working on, and if it's a good fit, and share what that would look like, and we can go from there. So you got 3 ways: something free and facilitator camp, community, and then a one-on-one option as well. So we have 5 minutes left for Q&A. I would love to answer any questions that you have, either about our topic today, about any of the options that I threw out there for you to keep learning all about facilitation and being an awesome facilitator. Questions, thoughts, comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Kelly.
What's up, Kelly?
I think one of the things that I struggle with as a facilitator is, presence, because I'm trying to lead an activity, keep track of time, make sure kids don't eat things, interact with them, manage volunteers, and I think that's something that I really struggle with, and maybe is a potential answer for me to have like a backup person so that I can feel more supported. Or what are the different methods that could help?
Yeah, I think you just nailed it, is asking yourself as a facilitator, what support do I need in order to be present? And I know that some of the things that you do, there's tons of students, tons of kids, tons of things happening. So what are those things that you can delegate to other people on your team, or what support do you feel like you need so that you can focus on what you're actually there for?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's great. Knowing like, okay, I think about, okay, Camp Yes is coming up. There's a million things happening.
Yeah.
How do I get and stay as present as possible? And so, I've been doing meditations every day and reconnecting with the intention of camp. And so it's this ongoing, it's like a personal practice. And then it's also, okay, I know that I need a point person at camp to answer questions. Like, I'm not the question person. Kate's the question person or whatever, right? And so it's like, hey, everyone, like, I'm going to be leading us through this thing. If you have any questions or you need to use a bathroom or these things are happening, talk to so-and-so.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Totally. That's a good question, though.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. And if you want to answer in the chat box, I know that I asked like what your 1 degree shift is, but what was your biggest takeaway from today? I always like to ask that one too as a final closing. Your biggest takeaway from today, and you can put that in the chat box before we end our time. And happy to do more Q&A. We got 3 minutes. If people have other questions, they can type them in the chat box, or I would love to hear what was your biggest takeaway from today? So Monica says to connect to the intention of everything that I do. Intention is like so powerful, so magical. And realizing like, okay, if I'm really clear and grounded in my intention, I can really trust that I have what I need to have. I have everything that I need. The right people are in the room, and it's going to be amazing. What are you most looking for in the applicants for the facilitator camp? Great question, Molly. So mostly I'm looking for, like, I want to make sure that facilitator camp can help you at the end of the day. So it's not like I'm like, oh, who's good for this and who's not good for this. If you're on this call, you're probably a really good fit for facilitator camp. So I'll just name that. I'm more just, the application is for you to get clear of like, okay, it's super short. There's just a few questions on there for you to get clear of like, okay, where am I at my facilitation? What's my vision? What are my biggest challenges and what do I hope to get out of this? And so it's just really an opportunity for you to reflect on what you would want to get out of that experience. And then for us to just have a conversation, and then we go from there. So there's not like something specific that I'm looking for other than, hey, is this a good fit? And if it's a good fit, then I would invite you to join us and to sign up and join the crew. We have like some amazing folks that are going to be, Sharita's flying in from, where does she live? She lives like on the East Coast somewhere. I forget where she lives, like over in Virginia. Someone's flying up from California. And the awesome thing about Facilitator Camp is it's all inclusive. So we all are going to be staying at this like beautiful retreat center, farm to table meals, beach adventures. Like, I think that it's all of that like fun, informal time as much as like I'm going to provide a lot of awesome insight and content. And I'm actually going to do some rad stuff around like the business of facilitation. If you work for yourself, how to make money, putting on live events and live workshops and things like that. And I'm honing that as a skill set as well. Because I'm like, we gotta, make some money doing this too. If you don't have a job, like Erin has a job, what does Erin say? My biggest takeaway are presence, being a part of my body, and the idea of asking others what shows up when I show up. Remember that fun work assignment. Ask other people, what do you bring to the room, to the team, to the table? So Molly, I hope that I answered your questions about, hi, person behind Erin. Molly, I hope I answered your question about Facilitator Camp. If you have other questions about it, feel free to shoot me an email. And the application is like, it's no risk. Like if you apply and it doesn't work out, like it's all good. It's just the first step, again, in us connecting more and you getting the support that you need. So with that, we are going to end our time today. Thank you all so much for your presence and for the work that you do in the world. And let's go out there and transform lives together. Until next time, take care.